Parents who have disowned or genuinely stopped loving your child, what happened? Story 1. My father said my mother's issue was that she had too many children, which gave her some kind of brain fever, much like a dog that loses its mind after having too many puppies. My mother said my father felt trapped by me. He was planning to leave when it was just my 2 older brothers, but then my mother got pregnant with me and he felt obligated to stay. Now that I'm an adult with 2 kids myself, I think I've realized that both of my parents are just extremely mentally ill and incapable of loving anyone, including themselves. Story 2. I was an addict and a mess for a long time, and my mom couldn't keep bailing me out of trouble and watching me self-destruct anymore. I wasn't living at home. She came to see me one last time to tell me she was done, not to contact her, and she would no longer have anything to do with me. She was in pieces. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for her. But it was the best thing she ever did for me. Once she cut me off, my rock bottom came hard and fast. After a little while of living on the streets and my addiction consuming me, I made my way to a detox center, got a few days clean under my belt, and never looked back. That was almost 15 years ago. After I was clean for a little while, I contacted my mom, and little by little we built a relationship again. And now we're really close. I am forever grateful to my mom for letting me fall and letting me get back into her life. Story 3. I dated a girl for a long time who had been molested by her brother for years growing up. Her parents tried the whole, "we need to move on" thing. Forgive him. He's our son. It effed her up to have to see him during holidays. She was cutting, drinking herself to sleep, and they destroyed a very beautiful and amazing person. It got better. Well, he went to federal prison for making and distributing child pornography and having sex with so many underage girls. Story 4. I asked my biological father at age 28 why he never tried to see me after he and my mom got a divorce. He said he never wanted to try for any custody arrangement because that meant he would have to pay child support. So the fear of child support led him to stop talking to his 9-year-old. He's currently doing the same thing to my 2 younger half-sisters. Some people just really shouldn't be parents. Story 5. As Jehovah's Witnesses, my parents disowned my siblings and me several times since I was in my late teens. One of the JW rules is that you do not associate with others who know the truth but refuse to follow it, including family and friends. Parents are encouraged to disown any children who have left the religion. The first time was when I was 19. It upset me. I was heartbroken, and eventually they changed their minds, only to do it again a couple of years later, and so on, until I stopped caring and no longer attempted to be a part of their lives at all. Story 6. I was seeing a girl in high school. Her family was JW, but she really didn't care. I really liked her, and it was fun, but then she disappeared. Her dad found out, and she was sent to live with a grandmother. I never saw her again. Her sister managed to let me know what happened, and that the girl was sorry. Really bummed me out for a couple of years. Story 7. I've been legally disowned by my father. When I was 11, my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. This was her second diagnosis in around 4 years. Obviously, she recovered the first time after intense surgery and a lot of chemo, and he didn't want to look after her like he did before. He also had a new girlfriend and her family to look after, apparently, and he had no issues leaving us. When my mom passed away when I was 14, my brother, my grandmother, and I met up to discuss who I was going to live with. The plan was my brother and his family. My father was never considered. And he showed up and declared that he was in the process of going to court to legally emancipate himself from me. He went out of his way to legally declare that I was no longer his child, just so that my brother, a 22-year-old with a wife and 2 young children, already struggling on 1 paycheck, couldn't seek child support. Story 8. My biological father divorced my mom and also his 3 kids, basically bouncing out of our lives and making it clear he wanted next to nothing to do with any of us when he left. Years later, at my older sister's funeral, which he had the effing gall to attend, I asked him why he did that, and he said, "I thought it would be easier for everyone." He actually meant it was easier for him to run home to his wealthy family and enjoy a second adolescence while my single mother worked 2 jobs to feed 3 kids under 10 with 0 child support from him. Story 9. I went out with a woman who had a 22-year-old son that she disowned forever. She didn't like to talk about him at first, but one day she told me that she caught him molesting his 8-year-old cousin when he was 20 years old while the rest of the family was having dinner downstairs, including the 8-year-old's mother. I didn't ask anything more than that. Story 10. My father disowned my older sister when she was in high school. She had been raped while walking to a friend's house, and he blamed her. She later tried jumping out of a moving car because she was depressed and suicidal. My dad never really liked my sister and refused to go to any father-daughter dances. He was distant from her for seemingly no reason. He finally said he disowned her after she was taken to a mental hospital to help with her behavioral issues stemming from the rape and literal daddy issues. He called her broken goods when he disowned her. Because she was disowned, she got pregnant at 17 despite him, and that sealed the deal for my dad. My sister is jealous of me because I was the younger, beloved child that my dad always wanted. But she doesn't see that he treats me like a doll and makes degrading comments when my looks aren't up to his standards. My sister grew up with a voice and a free will. My father hated that. The only reason he loves me is because he not only broke my free will and my ability to choose, but also thinks of me as clay that he can mold into the perfect daughter. Now I'm trying to break the mold and ignore him now that I'm an adult, but it's hard to accept that it's okay not to be perfect. My sister still has mental issues from everything my father has put her through. She's become literally crazy, and she requires medicine and a lot of therapy even now. Story 11. I disowned my grandparents on my dad's side. My dad's parents are both divorced and remarried to different people. His father's a great, lovely guy and is super helpful when we need it. His mother and her new husband are real pieces of work. She moved to Spain when I was maybe 11 years old. When I was 16 or 17, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. My grandfather and Nana were super helpful. Took him to appointments, picked up my brother and me from activities, generally just being a great help in a difficult time. My grandmother and her cousin of a husband, however, flew back from Spain just to tell us that they would not be helping with anything, that she's mainly focused on her knee replacement surgery in Spain. So at that point, I decided I wanted nothing to do with her. I haven't as much spoken to her in over 6 years and have no intention of speaking to her again. She did as good as disown my father in his most difficult moments, and that cannot be forgiven. My father survived his cancer. He's healthy and happy now. Story 12. My sister was disavowed. She was a perfectly normal and happy person until she turned 16, and then, out of nowhere, she joined a gang of druggies and started breaking into houses and doing all kinds of crazy shit. Stealing all of our stuff on multiple occasions, punching grandma in the head over $10, etc., etc., etc. The police had her drug tested a dozen times, and she was always clean. Her parents spent $10,000 on a stay in a psychiatric facility to try and find out if she had a mental disorder or had she been sexually abused or something. But there was no indication of any kind of underlying issues. One day, she came home and said that she needed money for another abortion, and my parents lost their shite. No one had known she was ever pregnant, let alone multiple times. They said that they would take the baby, but she refused to go through with the pregnancy, so they cut her off then and there. And then it was like she literally never existed. Story 13. My parents disowned my brother for basically being a huge piece of shit. He stole a lot of my mom's expensive jewelry and pawned it. He stole about $1,000 worth of my video games and pawned them. He stole a lot of my dad's tools that he uses for his roofing business and pawned them. He used my parents' vehicle as collateral for a loan that he defaulted on, and on top of that, even though this one isn't all his fault, he had sex with a friend of the family's wife and caused them to break up. So nobody in my family talks to him anymore.